The following is a paid program from the law firm of Pintus and Mullins.
Every year, tens of thousands of people become victims of lung cancer and lung disease. And shockingly for them, it didn't come from smoking. This program uncovers some of the real reasons why cigarettes may not have played a role in these devastating diagnoses. Lung cancer and lung disease are among society's worst and most persistent menaces. These diseases decimate individuals, families, communities, and countries around the world. While treatment options have improved over time, a diagnosis of lung cancer sadly can often become a death sentence. Through no fault of their own, these victims develop the disease in ways they could not prevent themselves. Negligent, profiteering companies who knowingly produced toxic materials like asbestos, who turned a blind eye to the dangers of what they manufactured, are the ones squarely to blame for the devastating harm and the tens of thousands of preventable deaths.
So there are certain professions that have been exposed to asbestos, mostly older men in their 70s who worked in the Navy. They were boiler makers, worked in construction, and these are the men that were exposed throughout their job.
Asbestos was everywhere.
I didn't think nothing of it. It was something that, that was my job.
We were never told. There was never nothing said, here's your garments, here's your gloves.
No one ever said to me, wear a mask or wear a cover.
Many people who wanted to just feed their families, they wanted to just serve our country, and there were people that knew the ramifications of exposing their workers to asbestos.
Stay tuned to learn more about the causes of lung cancer and lung disease you may never have known about, and what families can do from a legal point of view when a loved one is diagnosed. I'm Chris Hansen. I've been an investigative journalist my entire professional life. Today, we want to dig into the topic of lung disease and pull back the curtain on why cigarettes aren't always to blame. When a doctor gives someone this fateful diagnosis, it can often trigger a deep depression, a feeling of helplessness, and that sense of, why me? Perhaps the patient worked in a job that over a number of years directly exposed them to asbestos or other toxins in the workplace, substances they were in immediate contact with over months and years and even decades.
I got out of boot camp in 1976. The second I got out of boot camp and they assigned me to that big warship, it was the USS Chicago, CG-11, the last in a long line of the big battleships, right? For the first 4 months I was on that, I was down in the engine rooms, literally packing out the long raw fibers of asbestos, walking them up to the dock and dumping them into dumpsters, and these big clouds of this white dust would get all over us. And when you washed off in the evening, you had to really kind of dab it off because they would actually dive into your skin. It's such sharp stuff. We knew it was asbestos. We all knew it was asbestos, but nobody really had an idea of the ramifications of being around the raw old fibers. You're exposed to this stuff all the time, but you're exposed to different levels of this all the time. When you go in and you take your shower in the evening and you rinse stuff off, this doesn't mean to say that you're not carrying it in and bringing it to your bedding. So literally, yes, you are sleeping with this. If the air isn't purified, if you don't have spaces blocked off with sheeting of some sort, it's going to permeate and get through the environment in which you live. I went into the VA in 2014 and I saw a little tag hanging on one of the bulletin boards, right, with a thumbtack that said, hey, would you care to participate in a clinical drug trial? I knew kind of what they were, but I thought, yeah, why not? But that's when they discovered that. They did part of it was CT scans. And that little nodule in the bottom part of my lung sat there for 3 years without doing a thing, but they knew it was there. They said, that looks kind of funny. And so when they took it out, they biopsied it on the spot, realized it was adenocarcinoma, which is related to asbestos exposure. It affected me permanently, a little bit short of breath now and worse as time goes on. And I'm really fortunate because had they not found that along about 68 or 69 years old, they would have said, hey, you got 6 months, So it was really, really pretty fortunate. The insidiousness of the dust and the dust laying on surfaces and just getting in there. And if you have a knowledge of it to protect yourself, that's fine. But yeah, to take advantage of somebody because of their basic knowledge, that's pretty raw. And anybody that finds himself in a similar position such as I should really pursue this thing, because not only do you deserve to get a little bit of compensation for what you've been through, but it also works the other way that a lot of people don't think about. This is intended to hold people accountable, and it's intended to actually increase the basis of knowledge, I think, in terms of bringing it all together.
If you or a loved one has been diagnosed with lung cancer or any other lung disease and worked in such high-risk environments where they were directly and repeatedly exposed to asbestos and other toxins, you should call the Pintus & Mullins Law Firm today. A $30 billion trust fund has been set up to compensate those who have been diagnosed with lung cancer or mesothelioma from their workplace exposure, and you may be entitled to a substantial financial settlement from this fund. The call is free and confidential. Call us at 877-707-7717 now and let us know what happened to you. Our team has helped thousands of lung cancer victims and their families. That's 877-707-7717 or go to lungcancerclaims.com.
We know the American workplace is safer today than it was in the past, but to gain greater insight into the dangers of direct exposure to asbestos, which was sadly all too common not that many years ago, we turn to this expert on occupational health and safety.
Here in the United States, in 1970, we have the Occupational Safety and Health Act. So this was designed to help mitigate these risks, not just from asbestos, but many different types of hazards workers were facing in the United States. And so that created the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA. So after OSHA set the regulations into effect, it did not happen overnight in terms of the industry complying with those standards. There was a lot of changes that had to take place. There were workers exposed to asbestos long after the regulations took place. As far as 1989, we were looking at direct exposures that should have been mitigated. We had information in the 30s that was covering the dangers of asbestos, and they were overlooked, because of big corporations, money, you name it. There's a lot of interest at play that kept this hazard in the workplace and in our personal lives as well.
I was heavily exposed to lots of real ancient old World War II type of asbestos, and it's very distinct in my mind. I distinctly remember that, and I really believe that that's where the bulk of my exposures came from.
You'd be touching it all day long as you're working around the side of the furnace to turn stuff on and off. You're touching the fabric of the furnace itself, and with that, your dust and things are coming up and subject to your breathing it.
When someone inhales asbestos fibers, it causes an inflammatory response, which leads to scarring in the lung tissue. This scarring in the lung tissue can lead to cancer or other lung disease later on down the line. Unfortunately, this can take many, many years. And some of the symptoms are very subtle. And even though there are studies out there that say that the more that you're exposed or the more intense of the exposure, the more your risk of having lung cancer, lung disease, and mesothelioma is, it doesn't take that much, and no one really knows how much of the body can endure before you actually have the detrimental effects from it.
If you or a loved one has been diagnosed with lung cancer or mesothelioma within the past 3 years and worked in the trades during the 1960s or 70s, or even into the early 1980s in construction, shipyards, railways, aircraft, auto repairs, among many others, you may be entitled to significant financial compensation. In fact, a $30 billion trust fund has been set up to compensate those who have been diagnosed with lung cancer or mesothelioma from their workplace exposure. Pintus & Mullins has represented thousands of individuals and families in these circumstances, and we are here to listen and to help.
What many people don't realize is that it does not cost them a single penny. We only get paid if we win a case. We get paid from a settlement only.
Call us today at 877-707-7717 for a 100% free and confidential conversation. We have been successful in these fights by relentlessly pursuing justice for our clients and surrounding them with a dedicated legal team that best fits their circumstances and individual situations. Our number is 877-707-7717 or go to lungcancerclaims.com.
For 37 years, what we've done is we fight for victims of people with serious injuries. And we represent clients in every single state. That's our job. And we're an advocate for the people who we represent.
We find that most of our clients, most of them are men, but we certainly have a lot of women. Our clients are usually in their late 60s or 70s, and they may be painters, they may be carpenters, a lot of carpenters. We see a lot of military men and women. I think it's important to know that a lot of our clients get concerned because they love their job and they worked their entire life for sometimes one company, and they don't want to sue that company. And we don't. We don't go after that company. We don't go after your boss.
We're not suing the Navy, we're not suing the government. We're going after these companies that placed you in harm's way with this asbestos.
The people that made it and brought it into the environment, those are the companies that are responsible, and that's who we go after, and there's a lot of them.
Asbestos goes as far back as the Stone Age, where it was used to strengthen ceramic pots. Fast forward all the way to the 19th century, when manufacturing companies began to use it more and more widely. They saw asbestos as a great insulator, which was also highly heat resistant. The U.S. asbestos industry is said to have begun in 1858 when it was mined in a quarry located in Staten Island, New York. The company doing the mining was called the Johns Company, the early predecessor to the Johns Manville Corporation. They and others who were the manufacturers found great success across the country by selling asbestos for a wide variety of uses for fire retardant coating, concrete, bricks, pipes and fireplace cement, many types of gaskets, insulation, fireproof drywall, flooring, roofing, even lawn furniture. Not so long ago, artificial Christmas snow was made with asbestos. Anyone working in these manufacturing trades and with these products in industrial settings could be very highly exposed, and the tragedies reverberate to this day. The height of asbestos use and consumption in this country occurred in 1973, when more than 800,000 tons were produced. Thank goodness asbestos is now either banned or strictly regulated across the globe, so younger generations are not in harm's way the way their parents or grandparents were.
I'm a 60s child, and I was born to immigrants, my mom and dad from Italy. And so I'm a son of immigrant family. And my father was a cement mason, my mother was a homemaker, and I was real interested in the steel business. So I started off in conveyor fabrications at the age of 18, and processing steel, all the different types of handling. I was a saw operator, shear operator, different kind of crane operators, high-low license, a lot of different things. A grinder hand, which I ground thousands and thousands of plates. It's been 40 years now, so I've been doing the same type of work, steel trade. Being 18, 19 years of age, I didn't really think too much of the safety aspect of it. I just wanted to do the job. I can't tell you how many times I came home with stiff jeans, and it was from the dust. And the caked up hair, it would be in my hair, the dust of the grinding, and not give it a second thought. We were never told. There was never nothing said. Here's your garments, here's your gloves, here's this, here's that. Whatever the foreman said, I did. And I didn't know exactly how bad it was till later on, you know. I developed a cough. I had some bloody phlegm that came up. Anyways, I called my doctor. He said, sounds like bronchitis. And he says, don't worry about it. I'll see you in 6 months, you're good. And I insisted. I wasn't gonna leave the office. Could I get one of them low-dose cancer screenings? Nah, you don't need one. He argued with me, my own doctor of 20 years. finally, okay, I'm gonna write you the script. Well, 3 days later, he calls me up, come to the office right away. It was something that we had found. And that's when he told me there was a large mass on my left lung. And he was gonna let me go. 6 months later, I would have been dead. I must have cried every day for 6 months. It just makes you feel that way. You feel vulnerable, weak. You have this disease. You don't know if you're gonna live even. I was able to come out of this and still be alive because a lot of them thought that I wouldn't make it because it was just overgrown. You know, I was a lucky one. I consider myself lucky. When you're out for work with cancer, it's not only a sickness, but it's a financial strain as well. You have a lot of doctors and there's a lot of money involved. It was Pintus and Mullins that first reached out to me, and they treated me with the respect. Very knowledgeable people, very caring people. They really care about their people that they represent and trying to help. And so therefore, I was glad to become a part of that, and I still am.
If you or a loved one has been diagnosed with lung cancer or any other lung disease and worked in such high-risk environments where they were directly and repeatedly exposed to asbestos and other toxins, you should call the Pintus & Mullins Law Firm today. A $30 billion trust fund has been set up to compensate those who have been diagnosed with lung cancer or mesothelioma from their workplace exposure, and you may be entitled to a substantial financial settlement from this fund. The call is free and confidential. Call us at 877-707-7717 now and let us know what happened to you. Our team has helped thousands of lung cancer victims and their families. That's 877-707-7717 or go to lungcancerclaims.com.
When you look at the actual fibers of asbestos, when you breathe them into your lungs, it causes an inflammatory response, which in essence causes scarring. When you have scarring in the lung, which is literally a bag of air, the lung is spongy. And when you take that lung and you literally form scar tissue around it, you're essentially drowning someone. So the way I describe it to my patients is when you were a kid and you did paper mache, where it creates that hard shell, that's what actually happens to the lung. And by the time you have symptoms, it might just be a little subtle cough or some shortness of breath, or you might notice over a few years that you can't climb the stairs anymore. In those cases, I would highly, highly recommend that you get things checked out by your doctor.
After I graduated from high school, I went to work for an area electrician and doing basic wiring in new buildings and stuff. From there, I got picked up by GM, and then I went to work in the General Motors factory in the area. And from there, I decided to join the Navy. After 4 years in the Navy, I came back and I was able to work in another facility in the forging plant. The plants that I used to work in were all very old facilities, and they had the asbestos plumbing on all of the furnaces that they had. It was everywhere. Everything that was around you was falling apart to some degree, and there was no reason to worry about it. No signs on it. No one told you to stay away from it. I just remember it was above my bunks, and I used to write on it all the time, or write little notes to things just for the next guy to see. My knowledge of what the chemicals were around us was nothing. We did not know of the trouble that we were playing with. It was part of all of our business functions in each of the facilities that I worked in the early 70s. I was originally diagnosed with lung cancer in December of 2019. I immediately went through the list of all the things that I'd been through in my life, and it dawned on me that I've been around and played with all of that stuff early in my career, every day. It's been a regular part of my life since then, and now I have lung cancer.
If you or a loved one has been diagnosed with lung cancer or mesothelioma within the past 3 years and worked in the trades during the 1960s or 70s, or even into the early 1980s in construction, shipyards, railways, aircraft, auto repairs, among many others, you may be entitled to significant financial compensation. In fact, a $30 billion trust fund has been set up to compensate those who have been diagnosed with lung cancer or mesothelioma from their workplace exposure. Pintus & Mullins has represented thousands of individuals and families in these circumstances, and we are here to listen and to help.
What many people don't realize is that it does not cost them a single penny. We only get paid if we win a case. We get paid from a settlement only.
Call us today at 877-707-7717 for a 100% free and confidential conversation. We have been successful in these fights by relentlessly pursuing justice for our clients and surrounding them with a dedicated legal team that best fits their circumstances and individual situations. Our number is 877-707-7717 or go to lungcancerclaims.com.
You know, the United States is one of the few countries in the world, industrial countries, that still uses asbestos. It's been banned in almost every industrial country in the world except the United States.
Really, one of the hardest parts is sitting across a kitchen table with somebody recently diagnosed with lung cancer or mesothelioma and with their family, and you're knowing how devastating this disease is, and knowing further that it was potentially preventable. It's so hard to digest.
Asbestos has left us with a sad legacy. According to court documents, manufacturers knew of the dangers of asbestos since all the way back to the 1930s and concealed this information from the public for decades. While heavy-duty exposure has affected millions, too large a number to even grasp, the real story is in the individuals who have suffered.
I grew up in northern Wisconsin, a little town called Chippewa Falls. I grew up there. After graduation, I didn't know what to do, and I wasn't going to stick around town, so I joined the Coast Guard. My first 2 ships that I was stationed on were built in the 1940s and saw service during World War II. As a damage controlman, I would either be in the engine room, watchstand, or oil boiler room. So you walk in and you hit the side of the boiler, and the dust comes off. Well, that dust came off. That was probably parts of asbestos particles that were coming out of the blanket that was keeping the boiler room cool. I didn't think nothing of it. It was something that, that was my job. I didn't wear any special devices to keep me from being exposed to it because we didn't know the damage that it was happening at that time. When I transferred off the 2 icebreakers, I received a letter at my next duty station saying that the exposure to cancer-causing substances aboard the boat required them to enroll me in a health monitoring program operated by OSHA and the Coast Guard. They put me on a health monitoring program, and one day we were sitting around talking with the pulmonologist, and he says, I'm concerned because the spot that we had been following for the last number of years stopped moving. We came in a couple days later, we did the testing, and he called about 4 days later and he said, I want you in here right now because what we found is that you have lung cancer. So we went in and we met with a cardiothoracic surgeon. He laid out a program to remove the upper lung. And as we were getting out of there, one of the surgeons came through and he says, that was asbestos and your lung looked like the heel of a shoe. He said it was flat and hard as a rock. Once those little fibers get embedded in the areolar sacs of the lung, it continues to eat away and it hardens that portion of lung and makes it where it does not properly exchange the oxygen into the blood. They say that it will show up 40 to 50 years after exposure is when they're seeing it. Mine is 50 years. It was profit over people. And the people are the ones that ended up being hurt. My experience with Pintus and Mullins has been nothing but fabulous. And I really appreciate everything they've been doing for me.
People have been conditioned that if you have lung cancer and you're a smoker, well, it's only from smoking, and that's not true. There's a much higher incidence of lung cancer for people who are exposed to asbestos and are smokers. And so that even if somebody's a smoker, they oftentimes, most of the time, will have a valid asbestos claim as well. So what's unique about our company is we represent clients all over the United States. We also bring a legal team on each of these cases so that they're not getting a single lawyer, but they're getting a team of lawyers. And we have found that approach is extremely effective. We have some of the largest verdicts on lung cancer, settlements and verdicts on lung cancer victims. And we've recovered millions of dollars on mesothelioma clients individually.
What we do and what we care about is we take every case, every client that comes to us, and we truly build a network of experienced, compassionate attorneys to fight for you. And not just compassionate about you, but compassionate about the cause and aggressively pursue justice because you were wronged.
Pintus and Mullins pioneered this approach to its clients. They know every situation is different. They know the individuals and families involved have their own personal trials and tribulations, many times unique to them. That's why each client gets its own team made up of elite legal practitioners to advocate for them and to seek justice.
Having a good representation matters. Having a good voice matters. And when you have Pintus and Mullins, you've got nothing but the best. And therefore, you're not going to worry. It leaves you at ease. That's one less thing you have to worry about because you know you have the right people in place.
If you or a loved one has been diagnosed with lung cancer or mesothelioma within the past 3 years and worked in the trades during the 1960s or 70s, or even into the early 1980s in construction, shipyards, railways, aircraft, auto repairs, among many others, you may be entitled to significant financial compensation. In fact, a $30 billion trust fund has been set up to compensate those who have been diagnosed with lung cancer or mesothelioma from their workplace exposure. Pintus and Mullins has represented thousands of individuals and families in these circumstances, and we are here to listen and to help.
What many people don't realize is that it does not cost them a single penny. We only get paid if we win a case. We get paid from a settlement only.
Call us today at 877-707-7717 for a 100% free and confidential conversation. We have been successful in these fights by relentlessly pursuing justice for our clients and surrounding them with a dedicated legal team that best fits their circumstances and individual situations. Our number is 877-707-7717 or go to lungcancerclaims.com. The preceding program was paid for by the law firm of Pintus and Mullins.